1:15 a.m., December 17th. Inside the hearth, a loosened corner fell from the peat. I followed its volatile glow to the floor of the marble fireplace, my eyes fixed upon it as if a comet burned across the sky and burst into a riot of fireworks. It was nearly half midnight before we had resigned to bed, and I had found it a great struggle to stay upright. The young gentleman, Mr. O'Connell, had returned home, but the Chinnerys remained. They would leave in the morning. Mrs. Chinnery feared the effects of traveling in the night air. I feared for the happiness of her daughters, and this I whispered drunkenly into Sarah's ear before she delivered a corrective pinch to my arm. I prayed that they found or would find happiness in their simplicity, but contrived subservience was impressed on them. Maybe they knew of nothing else. Sarah curled up as any puppy at my side, her head propped upon my shoulder. She watched the fire as I did. The bed was still cold. It had absorbed the chill of the night, and the fire had just recently been lit. Why do you set up those poor girls? I found not having to strain to control my legs left me free to speak. Do you not see them blush? And anyway, if you have no heart for them, what joy does my awkwardness bring to you? I know that to me it carries only grief. Should I be ashamed? You should feel just that, precisely that. It is distressing to see what I love find joy in such a thing. I have indulged too heavily, but still the subject pains me, and the drink only allows me to bring it up. Sometimes I wonder if you think I have no feeling, or I wonder why you pretend not to. There was a space. She stared into the fire, the light reflected hollowly upon the green eyes. Leighton had the same green eyes. I thought, I didn't think, well, maybe that it would be game. You are right. One should find pity for the Chinnery girls, not contempt. There is no spirit found in another's discomfort. There. Has that placed me in a better esteem? Only if you are sincere. And I find the response lacking. I am that. The back of her hand brushed my cheek. She then let it fall across my chest. What is lacking? You know what? You say that you do not, but you know. So why do you do it? Why do you protect yourself? Your uncle, I can see, he is a hard man. He covets his place and arranged on your father's death for it all to fall to his custody. His wife is a good woman. She offers no ill cares, but I cannot impress upon anyone the hurt borne by thinking you shield yourself from me. Why would uncle have done had father not willed the money to my brother and me? But father only granted him the Leighton estate from that one stipulation, that one condition, that his brother would house me here. And now that my poor brother has died without wife and child, I hold all of the wealth. And so uncle wants that wealth. For what is a house without a fortune? And now that you have joined me, that fortune flies further from reach. How could two people, my father and his brother, come from the same root, yet grow so unlike one from the other? So this is the devil that wraps itself to my thoughts, that one man wishes such malicious ends for the child of a brother that only showed humility and generosity and love. So you wonder that I am also a chimera. Do not wonder such. None of this has anything to do with you. Then tell me why I feel it does. After father died, he took familiarity with him. All that loved me, all that I loved knowing it, was torn from me and thrown to the grave. Mother was too docile to be the oak I needed to grow upon. And so I vined along the ground, falling if I tried to rise. For a vine must lean upon another's strength. But I grew in spite of that. And brother was the only gift, and when he died, I learned not to feel sorry. There was no more compassion for me, and so pity was a thing never mentioned. I had no space to grieve the loss of the only creature that truly cared for me. Do you know what it's like to be unloved? I had to decide not to feel, because it would only be for the grief and regret. But you are drunk, and so I will not burden such a mind from my tales of loneliness and resignation. Still, from that pit I sunk myself into my brother's text, and I studied as a madman. And so you found me as I am, a scholar, that is all, because that was the only thing I left to secure the vine. Sarah, the confession darkens the nuisance. You cannot find those trials lessened at the very least. No, not that I assume the voids from loss. Your father and brother can never be usurped. I do not ask for dependence, not for that. I am no retainer. But to know that you charge me with nothing of meaning because you fear some betrayal, some incapability on my part. I cannot revoke any love for you, for that is not possible. But I can know that and still shiver from the cold idea that calls me suspect. You fall into self-doubt. Those words I never placed or charged on you. And you drive ahead of me. The question you asked, I answered, and only that. I was cruel through my own fallibility, and I do not seek for charity or pity. There is nothing for you in that, but you are the chart that writes my path before and as I move. I do depend on you. You are not the wall that holds the vine. You have nurtured me so that I may grow upon my own vigor. You are the mirror that shows what I should be. I wonder then why I should have such a living endowment. Do you see why I tease? It is only a projection of what is mirrored for me. It vexes me so that I do not consider it potency on others, and the weight is on me so that I cannot fathom its effects on anything but the symmetrical. Why did such fortune fall to me when I had resigned to the consistency of misery? So I am jealous of myself and fear that some tragedy must balance out this fortune. And here it is. You joke, sir. I am earnest. Look that your husband comes drunk, that he cannot judge his capabilities with the bottle. What a weight do you bear indeed? Tell me in the morning that I am not disquiet's mediator. You were not that nor now. Then I hold a promise. Her hand reached beneath my shirt and she drew herself in towards me. You do not feel the cold then as keen as I. The fire is a miser, and as the liquor warms you far better than the hearth warms me, I shall be a thief and nothing less. I drew her head to my shoulder. My own rested against the soft, dark amber of her hair. You barter a promise to intoxicate better than any liquor. Yet have you found the distiller to threaten that art? Tell me how that a man under the muse of drink finds his partner's tongue loosened. What think of you of my confession? True, we have crafted an enigma. Ah, my eyes closed. I may prove solider than a priest, for my brain may do nothing but erase those secrets by morning. I heard Sarah laugh loudly. She slid against the bed to reposition her head on my chest. Sleep was lifting the clutter and chaos from my mind. I heard Sarah mutter something about Lawson before the room fell silent. 10:10 a.m. I sat at my desk. The drumming in my head had lessened, and though the coffee tried to still the remaining agitation, the black liquid failed. I rose early, sleep deprived and haunted by an alcoholic residue that bartered to escape from inside my skull. Its admirable struggle kept me awake, draining the last breath of my energy for its labors, leaving me destitute. I left the bed in the night, cold of the early day. Sarah was sleeping with the ability of one untormented by the phantoms of drink. I left her side before she stirred to make good on the promise. But I did not want her to do that, for she already had. The morning climbed along around me. The Chinnery family arranged for their coach, and Leighton had left to ride out with somber Mr. Lawson. I was now preparing a lesson on spectrums. Not much progress raised itself, and little materialized on that note page I stared at. Delicate clicking approached me from the hall. The small terrier jumped upon my lap. It was the mistress dog. Leighton's wife was fond of the tawny, hair-wired creature, but the dog loved Sarah and had hoped to find her with me in the study, where she was wont to spend her mornings working with me. I scratched Todd's energetic head. He jumped from my lap and pattered towards the window. I turned in my chair to follow him. My head swam with emotion. He climbed into the wide, still bench and yapped at the horses in the yard. The master and dreadful friend had returned. I walked to the side table and moistened a toast section for the terrier. Margaret had carried the toast and water pitcher in for my breakfast. I could not eat anything. The impression of food mocked my stomach, and the smell brought on simmering vertigo. I thought I could even detect the scent of the water, and a dry nausea confirmed my suspicion. Earlier, I had left the room to find relief from sickness and to collect the black coffee, which had managed to subvert the compliments of my sickness. The dish clicked on the wood, and before the sound vibrated to nothing, Todd had dashed to the repast and began to lap the wet buttered toast. I went back to the desk. The coffee cup and the leftovers of its contents insulted my teetering state. It tipped the scale against me, and I moved the cup to the far edge of the desk. I folded my arms across the unfinished toast, coffee, and unstarted work, and left my head to find sleep. I awoke to the sound of retching. My dried out eyes waited for the wavering book to tighten into sharp review. I was surprised to realize with the semi-clarity of weak consciousness that the retching didn't come from me. My head lifted from the desk. The small dog shivered by the far wall. I watched him for a moment, not sure if I was locked in some edifying dream. The dog continued his nervous twitching, and I noticed the animal tried to regurgitate something, which would not come. I pushed myself from the chair and moved to where the distracted creature trembled. The beige dog whined, and as I knelt and touched the coarse furred head, again he convulsed and tried to vomit. His wide-eyed agitation was contagious. My mind raced to analyze what ignited the frenzy, but thoughts of the outcome of this fit sent a hard frost through my chest. My gaze searched the plate. The wet toast was gone, but the dog was not choking. I went to the tray and took up a piece of the remaining bread and smelled it. The butter was sweet and the bread wholesome. I moved to the door, praying for my wife to be in the library. She was always there before noon. Would she be there today? My call to her was unanswered. Sarah paused in the doorway and raised a hand to her waist. Todd! She went to the dog's side. He whined. Daniel, what happened? I gave the dog some toast and water. Have you eaten any? Her eyes searched mine. No, my own eyes widened. Todd was fine when he came in. He ate the wetted toast and I fell asleep. For how long, I don't know. He looks poisoned. The last word left me with incredulity. Sarah seized upon the outlandish proposition. Where is the... I backed to the side table. Here, the toast is fine. There is no indication. I smelled the water in its carrier. Botulism? I heard a maid passing in the hall. I turned to the door. Margaret! She startled. Yes, you gave me a surprise, Mr. Brennan. Margaret, run to the kitchen and get some mustard flour up there as fast as you can. Mrs. Layton's dog may be poisoned by botulism. Dear Todd, she gasped and gripped me with her eyes. Hurry, woman, he is gravely ill. I returned to the room and found Sarah placing an object on the table. It was her gold brooch. She poured some of the water on the ornament and reached for a letter opener tossed near the tray. I knew what she was doing. The metal was pit to the droplet and the gold, but the method did not stop my nerves. The result of the procedure needed no discourse. The adulterated liquid came to life as the metal touched the gold. The water released its secret in the violence of the charge and the reaction. Upon the face of the brooch stared the white crystalline perpetrator of reduced metallic mercury. I found my voice as Margaret panted into the room, thrusting a tin to my face. The mustard, sir. Oh, the poor beast. A kitchen boy appeared behind. James. I looked past Margaret into the scared, freckled face. James, get back to the pantry and get an egg and some milk. An egg and some milk. Run, boy. Sarah whispered over the reaction. Corrosive sublimate. Todd was poisoned. Looking at Margaret, I echoed her tone. Margaret gasped. Oh, sir, I poured the water and set the toast and butter myself. No one touched it before. How is it, Mr. Brennan? It is entirely and swiftly deadly, my dear. Her hands flew to her mouth as if she moved to prevent something's escape. They started shaking. Poisoned by me? We know what the substance is, Margaret. We know how to decompose the metal. I laid a hand upon the thin shoulder. Her hands dropped, and the invisible captive escaped from her open mouth. She paled as if she would faint. Did you? No. You would have found me in sympathy with the dog. Mercury is an unpleasant and painful toxin. I didn't know nothing was poisoned. It was all good and fresh, and as we all drank that water and used it for the breakfast then, the horror in her face finished the intended trail. The metal works quickly. No one else is ill. None of the staff. Her face was so bleached I was sure she would faint. I took hold of her shoulders. Margaret, Sarah disembarked an idea. Go and check everyone you can think of who took this water. I took it in my tea and am fine. Tell all that you see everyone and have them do the same. Have the kitchen wash all of the dishes before use in cooking and service. Wipe all of the counters and have everyone be certain to wash their hands and to not touch their mouths or anything to their mouths before washing their hands. Do you go, my friend, and administer this design? The absurd direness of the events had hardly sunk in. Providence had found me inclined to get drunk, and the hangover that twisted in my head and stomach saved me from death. What strange salvation! I took the egg James had carried. Separating the white from the yolk, the albumin was dropped in the glass. I beat the white and moved to the stricken dog. I slid the panting creature between my legs and forced the white of the egg down his throat. I held the dog's head upright for the antidote to continue on its way down to the poison. James, mix a tiny spoon of mustard into the milk. Here is the glass. I still held the small, quivering muzzle. The boy returned with the yellowed milk. I motioned him to place the glass at my side, but there would be no need for it. Todd shifted from me and backed further into the triangle of my legs. He coughed twice, twitched, and vomited the mixture of albumin and the now innocuous corrosive sublimate. Sarah scooped him up and stroked the wiry hair. 11:45. Where are you going? Sarah had returned Todd to his mistress and delivered the unimaginable story to her aunt. She bit into an apple. I pulled a greatcoat across my shoulders. I have a theory that needs clarification. Ah, and this theory places a pistol in your belt? Perceptive, but hopefully no. In fact, probably almost certainly no, but if it is wanted, it is there. You haven't eaten anything and it's almost noon. If I had eaten and took the water, I may not have seen noon. I had coffee. That is not eating. I took the apple in her hand and stole a bite. Sarah followed me towards the door. On the way we passed the misanthropic Lawson. He had returned from the Rhine, but remained in costume. Although he had always held my image in dark speculation, his rigid gaze seemed to examine me with unavoidable consternation. How was the ride, Mr. Lawson? Sarah queried. He bowed to her and set his eyes on my again. The horse was of superb quality. The light snow could only enhance the beauty here. You missed an amusing morning. It rather appears we saved Mrs. Layton's terrier from an early grave. Is that so? The sallow complexion warmed from the cold or the conversation. It was hard to decipher which. I addressed the taller man with feigned lightness. Yes, it seems the little dog came into some poison. Mercury, in fact. Sarah was able to identify the toxic element using electric current. Really? And how did the dog get into mercury? Lawson's gaze carved into mine. He seemed surprised to find me still breathing. And this is the most inexplicable part. The toxin was in water delivered with my breakfast. Boston, Massachusetts, June 24th, 2008. The international flights wait in the twilight of the harbor, about to transcend time, place, and vantage point. I position myself against the expanse of glass stretching across Terminal E of Logan Airport and propped open the hard-worn leather journal that had been the stay of my lecture tour. The yellowed page presented the scrawl of letters penned in an antique style. A curtain before the ink silent spirits of the past is lifted, and they speak with the wisdom of silence, words spoken inside the mind. A date in the same lyrical script sat at the entrance page. The year 1793. Monday, Dublin. Heavy cloud cover doesn't break until 7. The late sun turns the departing storm a sooty gold. Sky breaks through with pools of blue that push the promise of a fair morning into consideration. I sit on the edge of the quay to write this. I am decidedly sick of my lodgings and the dust of Dame Street. The tidal Liffey slaps the black hull of the ship moored to my left. The ship responds to this with wooden protests and creaks and groans. People are no different. They respond to the slap of progress with the same inanimate reaction of wood on wood. Preservation. We seek to save everything. Place, time, mores, even those calumnies of sense which are held in sacred extreme by the very being of their anachronism. The thing that is old is called good by its very oldness, and that antiquity bears an inherent illusion of legitimacy, a mirage of dignity. Why is the image so readily believed? The custom house, in ancient column splendor, lectures to the earth-brick dwellings kneeling around it. As the masses continue to genuflect to their betters, no one will exalt or recognize true reason. What was the saying? The great appear great to us because we are on our knees. But no fear of this. Let the privileged sigh with peace. This is troubling, because they, the rich, are troubled not, and none dare to stir the lavish waters. Man builds his own chains, said Rousseau. Who was the first to fence off a field and claim it as his alone? Why did not one protest at this audacity? Who was he to demand that a piece of earth belonged only to him? What arrogance! And what credulous fool bowed a head to impudence? All laws and injustices are constructed by man with arbitrary privilege as guide. Since the poor courtier does not lock his door, he has nothing to protect. It is only the rich that are served by law. Laws serve only those with things to protect. The labor of the people has no worth, though it is the lintel of the nation and the door of progress and civility. Those who govern are privy to such graces given to them by wealth alone. Where is merit? Where is benevolence? We seem to ignore these things, or willfully choose to delude ourselves, for the fear of watching our high-bred sorcerers reduced to the mundane is disturbing. For how could a noble, from a line of breeding, not possess the attributes of high birth? All the necessary tools of governing are bestowed at birth. They are a natural right. How many die to uphold this? What if this is to be disavowed? Then would our fabricated notions of inherited gifts be reduced to shreds? And after, who would hold the magic? Man panics at this void, the void loosed by the dethroned, deified leader. The January papers decried the death of the king. Where is the pity for the French people starving in a land of agrarian plenty? Where is the outcry for the soldier dying to protect the greed of a nation? The hypocrites shed tears as another ship sails from the African coast, laden with a cargo beyond the machinations of devils. This nation, as all nations, wants earthly gods to keep them safe. If we create a god, an inherited line of gods, then the chaos of the world is foiled. Ridiculous, childlike notions, and these are the basis of civilization. This is sad rubbish. Curious that we think ourselves above the beast, yet act as such or far below. Find an animal that murders and steals for joy, and because it can, that enslaves its own kind, and tortures to teach civility. Is man the only animal that perverts all that is natural. Wednesday, 5 in the afternoon. Moved into my new lodging, once again on Dame Street. The rooms are pleasant and to my liking. Habitable and fair lodging are at a premium, and my 50 expenditure is well spent. The landlady, Mrs. Thompson, is a clever woman, and we have become fast friends. She has taught herself to translate Latin and promises to produce some lines of her poetry for my valuation. I have been informed that she has been setting down verse for 3 years, near the time of her husband's passing. Friday, my birthday. Will the slave trade regain its footing amidst the villainy of fear-mongering now that war with France is declared? It will, because it must. The landlady delivers my sister's presents: a neat shirt without too many adornments and a new halter for my mare. Terminal E of Logan was heavy with milling passengers. It always was at this time in the evening when the international flights boarded. Night fast forwards into dawn with the spin of the earth, and we are reminded of the vertigo of space, joining the crest of vastness as we look down from the thin caress of atmosphere. An Alitalia jet announced its loading, and a rise of organized shuffling headed off towards the gate at my right. I moved to a different section of the viewing windows to avoid the crush of travelers. The flight to Milan was again broadcast in English and Italian. I closed a leather journal and studied the Air Canada's tail. There was the unmistakable dramatic maple leaf set off against the end of the day sun breaking over the cabin. Beyond Boston Harbor sat in its own light touched glitter. The juxtaposition of sea and green islands melted into landing strips. The ever-present past, ruled by nature, insisted it could not be swallowed by tar and industry. Nature was always the bigger force, an older force, the creator of the creature that fashioned airplanes. I loved this American airport. I loved it for the familiarity of those green, grassy islands stretched out as counterparts to the first break of Old World shore that meets the Atlantic. It was being in Ireland already. The air vents, seething a mustiness tinged with exhaust, had shaken my attention long enough for me to notice the boy that was standing near the glass. He had been drawn there by the planes, and I guessed him to be about 5. He had that strange fascination for construction vehicles and front-end loaders, a fascination so nearly held by all of that age. A small model plane was suspended in his stranglehold of a grasp. He was American. You could always tell by the clothes and the unconscious, self-assured stance. His interest had shifted away from the action of the runway some moment before. I had felt the curious, absorbing dog-like gaze. I let my own briefly meet his. Something about me and my foreign aspect awakened his instinct. I just didn't fit the common impression, and I had unconsciously collated that list of discrepancies: clothes, manner, longer than usual black hair, and the hard-worn journal folded closed in my hand. The inspection was conducted with the sincerity of any honest animal indulging in complex curiosity without the shadow of fear. And then our eyes had fallen upon the same path. A tiny twinge of surprise clicked in those naive brown eyes. What had been a private experience was suddenly interrupted and its owner exposed. I knew already how this was going to unfold because it followed a consistent routine. Me, inquiring child, inspection, exposure of the inspection, and that was that. But they all stared into my eyes for some time, and I always understood that some revelation was being transferred in the process. Just as the kid at Disneyland discovers that Donald Duck really is walking before them and therefore is real. That jolt of surprise softened by the conviction that they always knew they were right and the adults were wrong. And there was that unexpected pleasure of suddenly unveiling the truth. There hasn't been an adult version of this yet, although my life has come remarkably close to filling the void. Chris, the blonde woman with the startlingly large handbag, bent to collect the boy. You need to wait with Daddy and Samantha. She sounded each word with hilarious authority. We are going to be getting ready to board. Grandma's waiting in Dublin. Where did these people get some of those names? Samantha reminded me of an aged tabby cat. Maybe Aunt Penelope or Uncle Ulysses needed to be kept for posterity. Everybody is named Bella on TV and in books these days. So much for stretching towards creativity. At least I have a legitimate excuse for my own appellation. The boy, this Chris, continued to stare as he was dragged towards the baby and the father and the bags. The Aer Lingus tag jutting from one handle caused my spirits to wither. It must be Celtic adventure time. Going to harass those ancestors, no doubt. I repositioned my carry-on and pulled a cell phone from my coat. A flight to Amsterdam was announced. The same shuffling of passengers started milling about the terminal towards the gate. The phone soon emitted its ring. The number lighting up the screen was expected. Its glow set off from the black case body of the phone like some ridiculously ordered constellation. Nicole, I spoke the name flatly. How was the traffic? Her voice was altered by the cell, but the clear optimism ingrained carried through. I took the blue line. You always do. I smiled. We had known each other since I started visiting lectureship at our college. The plane is delayed half an hour. I looked at my watch. Some bus conveying music students got held up by the traffic. It's rush time. I still kept a watch. It was just easier to look at a real dial than fumbling with the cell. Adapting to new technology was fine as long as you stayed faithful to those inventions that worked, like books. I didn't have the patience for books online. Some things you just had to have in hand. Huh? Nicole's pleased voice tripped into my ear. One more reason for you to hate children. But I haven't called to help you pass those ages at Logan. She paused, envisioned her tapping her finger with some writing implement and the brown hair flipping rhythmically on its shaft. I want to ask you a favor. Do you think me in the mood to be agreeable? I could still hear the pen or pencil tapping through the phone. It made me lift my own hair in empathy. An agreeable offer? Nicole was 19 and she worked at the college. It was her sophomore year of business studies. She would correct me. Finance was the proper term. I love it when you talk that way, especially with the accent and everything. I added that bit for sarcasm. Close. It's like some masterpiece theater show, but with an Irish twist. Remember that last part with an Irish twist. Right. Next time I'll be more diligent in copying. A smart ass must be precise, she reprimanded. Of course, who would tolerate imprecision like a crook who offers his own account to a trembling teller? Exactly, it just ends up lame. The last word was emphasized for my benefit in a crafted, patronizing manner. So then, what is the question you wanted to ask of the smartass? I let my eyes wander with the family and the same boy, Chris, as they walked by. He kept his stare on me as he was dragged along by the arm. He looked like a dinghy bounding behind a motorboat. Aha, we agree on something, Nicole flaunted. Do you know Peter Taylor? English department, tall and thin, with another cool accent. Associate professor of 18th century literature, but why is that accent cool and mine is just talking like that? The Irish thing is cool in a Bono way. You know, I said it. They are both cool. Professor Taylor has the Bob Marley feel, and everybody likes that. Ah, now you said it, so I'm not quite as nice as Marley, huh? No, no, Bono and Marley are equally legendary, accents included. I wish I had an accent. It gives you charisma. Nicole was unusually pensive. You could sense her chipmunk cute face collapsing with disappointment. You do have an accent, as far as I am concerned. I told the truth, even though my motive was to raise the spirits of the puppy. Yeah, blah American, not Southern or anything. Nicole, it is still an accent. Trust me, as somebody from the outside, it's maca, right? I mimicked her New England pronunciation. It took me a long time to learn that. So how was it? That's good, kind of short, but I'd have bought it. But I like you better with the Irish. It makes you handsomer. And like that's possible. You better be blushing because girls like a foreign accent, Australian, English, Italian, it's all good, she laughed. So now I can get to the point of calling you in the first place. Nicole's voice groaned with mock earnestness. Shoot. I tried to sound Hollywood American just because I hated it. I told, she paused, Dr. Taylor and his wife that I knew someone with a place in Ireland for rent because, she emphasized this, they are leaving next month for a tour and they wanted to spend some extra time. And Nicole started to release her words like an auctioneer as pleaded and struggled to convince me. I have the house in Mallow, I interrupted before she exploded. In where? The house is in Cork. The house, she said with precision. That house is a mansion. It is available, and it isn't a mansion. It's technically a villa. So it is specifically in Mallow, this house, not mansion, but what have you, semiotics. How much? And it has two floors, but tons of space and a stable full of horses. That ain't no hutch in that country. Nothing for the hutch. I have no bookings, and letting the house get lived in would be a benefit. And it is for a colleague, sort of. Anyway, I have commitments in Dublin with another IAC guest staying in Sandymount. IAC, International Abolitionist Campaign, something like Amnesty International. Tell Taylor the details of the place you remember, and there is a car in the garage. The neighbors have the key. Saeed is there in the house, the trainer, so if the Taylors ride, that can be arranged. He hates being in the house alone. His wife is competing in the States for a few months. I forgot the schedule. My horses aren't traveling. Oh, yeah, Saeed. Too bad he's married. He looked hot on those horses. Where was he from? Too bad you're not a Bedouin. And he's from Saudi Arabia, but went to college in Spain, and that is where he met Radia. Right, yeah, I met Radia. The Taylors can use the car, right? Driving on the other side of the road, Jamaicans do that. English colony, yes. History courses doing well with you. On the other side, clever sounds intriguing. Oh, and thanks for groveling. No one clipped a gray cloud like you, Nicole. Yeah, I'm sure, she snarled. Give your man my number. I am going to be meeting them when they arrive, or if they decide to arrive, I should say. Grace is stuck in Dublin with her daughter and her new baby, so there will be no greeter aside from me. Sounds good. I'll pass that on. Papers were rustling across the wireless world. Almost forgot. Enjoy your flight. Her voice warbled over the gesture. Ah, touching. Goodbye. The phone ceased transmitting. Nicole had hung up. I'd be hearing from her in the coming days. I snapped the phone shut and headed for the duty-free shops filled with the oddest groupings of wares, expensive perfume, classy alcohol, candy, and other bizarre combinations. I grabbed a Globe newspaper and stood in the longest line. The purchases were as confetti, mixed as the stuff on the shelves. As I handed over the change, the call for Aer Lingus chimed across Terminal E. Premier class boarded at will, and every time I started to walk down the ramp, as one apple pie folk song chanted, it was good to go home.